Without further ado, I'm going to introduce Nana, our CII director. Nana, welcome.
Hello. Thank you, Jacob, for the wonderful introduction. And it's so nice to meet you all today. I jotted down some notes so I can pay attention to some things that you guys want to take away today and answer those questions for you. But I've got some fun slides that I'm excited to share with you. Again, my name is Nana. I'm the Catalytic Investment Initiative Director. In case you don't know what CII is, it's kind of a mouthful, but that is my role. And previously, I have business financing experience and branch management experience. So I'm really excited to just talk about management styles and best practices, and then touch on a few delegating opportunities that staffers can do with their board and go from there. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you all. And can everybody see the first screen? Thumbs up? Okay, perfect. So today we're doing a webinar talking about district staffer management and best practices. Okay. So we went over the introduction. So now I want to talk a little bit about the board, the agenda. So what we're going to be going over today, a few areas. So the first thing we'll be talking about is onboarding. So if you have a staffer, maybe they're new or they've been in their role for a little while, but we're going to talk about onboarding and what that looks like, setting expectations for your staffer. We're also going to go into time allocation and the day-to-day in and outs of what a staffer role looks like. We'll go over management must-dos, which we'll just talk about some core things to focus on as you are managing or supervising your district staffer. We'll also go over board engagement and staffer engagement and the balance between the two. And then we'll talk about evaluation and how you can evaluate the work that your district staffer is doing. And then we will go over appreciation. So how do we like to be appreciated as staffers and employees in our workplaces? And then I'll wrap it up and we'll leave it open for questions if there is time. All right, next slide. All right. So again, if you're attending this, you most likely have a staffer, are a staffer, or are thinking of hiring a staffer for your board. So you're in the right place, and I've got a lot of exciting things to share with you. And let's see here. I think I went a little bit quicker than, let's see. All right. So we're going to talk first about just Oregon labor laws. I just kind of want to set a preface and let you all know I'm not a licensed or certified HR expert. And so if you have any questions when it comes to independent contracting or labor laws, please familiarize yourself with the Oregon labor laws. There's a lot of great information there. And I placed the website here on the slide. We'll also send a copy of the slide to each of you at the end of this session today. All right, so moving right along. When it comes to setting expectations for your staffer, the job description is a great place to start. Let's talk a little bit about shadowing and coaching. So when you have a new staffer that's in your district, the first thing to do is really take them by the hand and walk them through the district, shadow and coach them about what that looks like. And so it could be introducing them to business owners in the community, and also going over the bylaws of your business district association. Another important thing to look at is just login information. There's a lot of online resources that the staffer should familiarize herself with. Instagram login, Google email accounts, and making sure that they're able to access that information and be able to communicate with businesses in their district. The next slide here is breaking down what the expectations look like for your staffer. So I like to talk about 3 ways to break down these expectations. We can look at it in the weekly, monthly, and quarterly way. And I have 3 different slides that I'm going to show you on how we can track those expectations And so the first one I want to talk about is the monthly tracking. And that slide looks like this. So here's a snapshot of our monthly district tracking sheet that we use with our district managers. The district managers fill this sheet out every month. And it's actually a pretty interactive sheet. There's about 5 pages to it, but this is a snapshot of what this tracking sheet looks like. And as you can see, it's broken down month over month. And what's listed on the side are some tangible areas for each district manager to focus on based on what those areas are for their specific district. So membership, board members, board directors, tracking volunteer hours and signature events. Also, the most important part here to notice is each item is broken down by month. And so you're able to look at how many members did we sponsor in the first 2 months and watching the growth time over time. Also, if there's grants that the district staffer is applying for, where they're at in the process, how many have been approved, also tracking revenue dollars and the membership growth. So this is a great tool to use, and it couples really well with this next slide here, which is the work plan. So this specific work plan is a snapshot from one of our districts, our CII districts, particularly this is the Gateway one. And the really neat thing about the work plan is it's broken down each task with specific items that the district wants to focus on. For example, if a district wants to focus on having 12 mixers for the year, which would be 1 mixer a year, and they want to channel how many members are attending the mixers and the growth quarter over quarter, this is a great way to track that. So the district manager is able to use the monthly tracking sheet to identify those things, and then at the end of the quarter, summarize it and build a narrative so that the board is able to compare and see the growth quarter over quarter. So I really like this template, and I think it's a really great way to measure success in your board and the growth.
Now, just to clarify, so the monthly tracking, that's done by the staff person as they kind of are looking at everything they had done that month. And then they present that, I assume, during the board meetings each month to the board, or how does that work?
Yeah, great question. So this specifically, the tracking sheet, the monthly tracking sheet here, the district manager reports that to me as their supervisor, but I would definitely suggest that you can use it the best way it is for your district specifically. It's a great way to keep track of each action item that they're working on and the areas that you want your district to be focused on for growth. We'll talk a little bit more about what the staffer presents to the actual board to summarize the activities they're doing later on as we go through these slides. Thanks for bringing that up.
Sure. And for the work plan, that is something that both the staffer and the board work together to create, right? Just so everybody's on the same page. And so
yes,
everybody
absolutely. Great question. Yeah, so this work plan is something that the board creates with the board members. And it's really, again, identifying specifically what are some goals that you have for your business district association and where do you want to see some growth? What are some focus areas? As you can see here on this template, there's a budget and there's a projected leader for each task. And so, for example, if your board happens to have a committee, an events committee, maybe the project lead will be, an individual from the events committee. And there's a specific approved budget that the board has created for the number of events they're going to do for that year. And then they're tracking the successes from those events and tracking it quarter over quarter so that they can see the growth and see, hey, is this an event we want to do next year? Was there success? Did we get the results we were looking for? Does anyone have any questions about these first 2 slides? I know there's a lot of information and it's just a snapshot of kind of the tangible expectations that we set for tracking purposes to see and measure success. But I'd like to leave it open as an engaged opportunity to get anybody that wants to share or ask any questions about these first 2 slides. Show of hands. I can only see so many people on my screen, so I'll try to pay attention here.
I put in a question in the chat. I'm Lisa from Albany, and so I'm kind of an anomaly here because we're not part of Venture Portland, so our staffers are independent and report to our board. But we started on worksheets and then moved to a program called Maestro that's specifically designed to manage communities. So I didn't know if that's interfaced with any other programs like that, or if the worksheet is more standalone for you.
Yeah, this worksheet is something that was created on an Excel spreadsheet. In fact, most of these worksheets are through Excel, but I think that it leaves it to the creative manager on how you want to create these templates. I haven't heard of Maestro. That sounds like a really unique program to be able to kind of create programs to help build tangible tracking sheets to see, where you want to focus in your district.
I'd be happy to give you a walkthrough sometime offline, so maybe we can connect.
Yeah, feel free to
It's
the link.
It's a whopping $50 a month, so it's affordable in most people's budget compared to some of the other offerings. So
Awesome. Thank you. And we'll definitely share these slides here later. So if you have something you'd like to share in the link that we can add, I would love that, Lisa. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next slide. This is the district tracking agenda. I use this as a weekly tracking sheet for the district managers. So this is something that helps me keep track of what projects the district managers are working on, where they have deadlines, goals that they're trying to reach. That's basically what this is. And so this is an interactive ongoing form that I use. So it's an interactive document that we use to identify dates, deadlines, social media posts, and how often they are reporting those different things and projects they're working on. It's a good way to stay tuned with what they're working on and where they may need support and guidance, and also to fine tune any loose ends. For example, if they have a mixer and they're needing to get catering and, order supplies for the event and all of those things. It just helps to be able to keep track of what each district manager is doing and where they need their support.
And Nana, is that a weekly check-in so this changes on a weekly basis?
Yeah, this is a weekly check-in. And so this is just an example, but usually each week the district manager will present this and we kind of use it as an interactive talking sheet. And then the following week, we'll go back and pick up on where we left off and continue the conversations. If they're working on a tour, which CII districts have tours that they do every month. And so finding out where that business location is, the date and the time, making sure that they've locked in commitment with the business owners. If they're having a guest speaker at a mixer, just making sure all that information is well coordinated and communicated clearly so that they can share that with their board. All right. Now we are on time allocation. So let's take a moment to think about the district staffer role. I'd love to hear from some of you as we look at the different items that are listed here. What is boots on the ground and what percentage of time do you think a staffer spends doing this? So please feel free to type in the comment field what you think the average percentage district staffer spends in their district boots on the ground. Is it 20%, 50%? I'd love to hear what you think that percentage is and what it looks like and why. And I'll stop sharing my screen here so I can look at the, let's see. Any guesses? Okay, I hear Carrie says 40%. Let's see, any other guesses?
Looks like
I can't
Ross said
see where to-
33%.
I can't see where to type. I'm muted.
Or you can just share it online. We're a small enough group. If you want to just say it out loud, we can do that too. And just kind of engage?
About 65%.
Okay. So you're all pretty close. 30% of this district manager's time is spent in their district. Boots on the ground is what we like to call it, where they're visiting with business owners, they're connecting with partners in the community and building those connections and those relationships. So 30% of that is the time that the district manager is spending out in the district. So you guys are pretty close, which is a huge portion of what they do. You know, just building that trust with the businesses is such an important thing. And you can see a lot of success comes from the amount of time the district manager spends in their district in the community. So what about planning? So when we look at event planning and project coordination, can any of you tell me what percentage of staffers, the staffers spend coordinating projects and events? Any guesses?
50%.
About 50%, okay. Any other guesses? Okay, I see 33%. Ross, you're close, you're close. It's 15 to 20% actually is the amount of time that they spend doing the planning, the event planning and coordinating projects and events. I'd love to use an example of one event that was super popular this last Christmas. St. John's district, the St. John's Boosters did the Ugly Sweater and Christmas Extravaganza event. And Tanya, the district manager, had shared with me that they had started the planning process for that 10 months in advance. And as you can see, it was a very, very successful event. So there's a lot of time that goes into event planning projects and just making sure that the vendors are identified, the partners are, everything's in schedule. Such a successful event that it was. And I just wanted to highlight St. John's Boosters and say, when it comes to event planning and things like that, it's such a great, great success to see the events that they've done. So the next thing here is scheduling meetings, communication follow-up, and social media. So 15 to 20% of that is where the district manager is scheduling meetings to meet with businesses in the community to kind of build a relationship and work on board recruitment. Also following up on emails and Instagram. So posting content on social media is a huge piece of the district manager role, as well as monthly newsletters and responding to emails. So that is what the time allocation breakdown looks like for the district manager and staffer. Any questions about that? Did any of those numbers blow any of you guys away, or does that sound pretty accurate with the staffer that you have in your district?
I think it's just, yeah, it's important to kind of realize how much time is actually going into just being in the district and doing the planning part. That's 50% of the staffer's time. So really, when you break it down, there's not a whole lot of time left over for the actual implementation of projects and some of the more governance related things like taking minutes or worrying about financial stuff. So it really just kind of stresses the point of how important having the support of the board is, just because there's not a whole lot of time left over after, you know, those first pieces get taken care of.
Absolutely, that's a great point, Jacob. And we're actually going to break. That actually leads me to my next point when it comes to the management must-dos. Oops, just a second here. Make sure we're on the right slide here. Okay. So A supervisor should be able to step in and support the staffer should questions or unexpected circumstances arise. And so that's one really important thing when you, if and when you have a staffer in your district, that they're able to have that ongoing communication with their supervisor, if it's on the phone, an email, or in person, if that's an option as well. Setting clear boundaries for your staffer so they know what decisions they can make independently. Jacob had mentioned that, you know, as we look at the district staffer's role and the amount of time they're spending planning and doing the boots on the ground, it leaves very little time for some of the board roles that are already filled. And so making sure that the staffer understands where they can take leadership on and where they need support from the board, and identifying those areas. An example of, you know, giving your staffer leadership opportunity would be, let's say, for example, there's a mixer and there's a budget that needs to be approved for the staffer to go and plan that mixer. That would be something that the board would do, not the staffer. And so just having clear, precise communication and identifying what the staffer is able to lead on and where that staffer needs board support. The next item here is finding out what areas your staffer is interested in developing and offering opportunities and tools for them to learn it. So this is basically, as you're engaged with your staffer and the board and you're learning about the role of your staffer, if the staffer has an area where they need to learn more, or they're interested in learning more about something, giving them the opportunity to be able to expand and grow in that is just a great way to keep the staffer engaged, but also build a stronger trust between the board and the staffer. Are there any questions about management must-dos or anything we've gone over so far?
I think it's just, yeah, important to mention that, you know, if a staffer can make decisions on their own without getting prior approval of the board for certain things, it just kind of helps to keep things moving along and making sure that, you know, there's not any delays, because a lot of times things require a really quick turnaround. So if the staffer knows that, you know, they can take the lead on something without having to wait to hear back from the board members, I think that makes it a lot easier to actually be productive and get things done in a timely manner.
Absolutely. And I think that's where, I'm so glad you mentioned that, Jake. That's where that trust between the staffer and the board, and that communication is really, really important, to have that balance so that they know, okay, my staffer understands their role and knows what they need to do. And they've, you know, given that trust to the staffer to be able to go out and make things happen. Because as we know, the board is made up of, you know, dedicated volunteers in their community that are also running businesses. And so very busy boards that are juggling a lot of things. And so it's such a great thing to have a staffer and be able to give them some opportunities to lead. All right. So board and staffer engagement. I think we just went over that. I'm just making sure I'm on track here. All right, so I think we're gonna leave it up to asking a couple of questions here. So each board member has their position. The staffer has their role and the board member has their roles. And so the staffer is a support to the board, but the staffer does not provide or sit in the same position as board members do. So I'd like to ask a question here. And the first question is, so please answer your, put your answers in the field here as I ask. So the first question is, what are some tasks that a board treasurer might be responsible for that a staffer is not responsible for? So think about your board and you have a treasurer on your board. What are some tasks that a treasurer is responsible to do that a staffer might not be responsible to do? Can anybody think of any?
Lisa says, review financials.
That's a good one. Yes. Review financials is right. That is basically saying that, you know, when it comes to what the staffer's role is and what the board member's role is, knowing what your role is and adhering to that is so important so that the staffer can really do what they're created to do in supporting the district. Another thing would be accessing bank balances, right? Going over a budget summary at a board meeting. That would be something that the treasurer would be responsible for doing. And so that wouldn't be an expectation we'd put on the staffer, but we would just want to make sure that if you are a board member and you have a role, that you adhere to that role so that the staffer can support the district and the board in the ways that they're supposed to. So awesome, great answer. The next question is, when a board meeting is in place, can the staffer vote or approve on board decisions? That would be a yes or no answer. So feel free to nod your head, thumbs up, thumbs down, or place a comment in the comment field.
I'm seeing a lot of no's here.
Yep, you are right. That is correct. The staffer is hired to support the board, but they do not make board decisions and they do not vote on board decisions. So if there is something that the staffer has created, which they do, which is awesome, they can make decisions or they can share suggestions and ideas. For example, if the staffer says, hey, I think we should do a street fair event, and the board says, hey, that's a great idea, the board would be the one to vote on that. But you can still give that staffer the opportunity to lead and share ideas. But at the end of the day, it would be the board that would make that final decision and voting on that. So one thing to remember with this is with the full support and engagement of a board, the staffer succeeds and the district succeeds. So I just really want to mention that today. All right. Next is evaluation. Jacob, I think this was an area you wanted to go over, so I'll let you kind of lead on this one.
Sure thing. Yeah. So we talked a little bit about you know, the importance of tracking and using the work plan to set goals and figure out if you're meeting those goals. But I think a lot of staff really rely on getting feedback and having an opportunity to have their performance evaluated to see if what they're doing is impactful, if they're on the right track, if their time is being used in the most efficient manner. So that's why it's super important for them to, you know, be aware of the goals that they're working towards. And then it's also super important for, you know, their supervisor to evaluate the success of those goals. So taking time at a board meeting each month to kind of give a progress update on those goals, and then definitely taking time to do a one-on-one performance evaluation with the staff person. So initially, after they're hired, 90 days is kind of a best practice to do that first, just to make sure that they're comfortable in their role, that there's not any glaring red flags, that they might not be able to do the things that they're expected to do. And then definitely put time on the calendar every year to do an annual performance evaluation, which is a more in-depth look at what did they do over the past year. Were they successful in meeting the goals that they had kind of agreed upon with the board? And what support might they need if they're having trouble meeting those goals? So that could include professional development, that could include getting support from the other board members on specific projects. It could include new equipment that might make their life, or software that might make their life a little bit easier and more efficient. So this slide is really just to kind of highlight the importance of that. And we've included a kind of template of the annual review that we use here at Venture Portland. And it's kind of done in a way where the supervisor will fill this out, but the staff will also fill out a self-review. And then the two are compared to kind of see where they lined up, where you agree, where you disagree. And it's a good way to kind of get everybody on the same page as far as where they're feeling that they were most successful and where they're feeling that they might need a little support in improving. So these can also be used to set goals for the following year, which will be kind of helpful as they work towards creating the next year's work plan with the board.
Thank you so much, Jacob. Yes, Jacob is absolutely correct. This is a review that we like to use with the first 90 days of hiring a staffer, and then it can be done annually. I think if it can be done quarterly, it's really great to kind of keep track of, the goals that the staffer has in mind and setting quantifiable goals that they want to work on so that they feel like they're growing and succeeding in their role. And as you can see, the characteristics for each item is listed here. And again, we'll send a template of this to each of you at the end of the meeting. So we are at the next one of our last slides here is appreciation. So I'd like to get a few raise of hands of those of you who maybe have an appreciation language of words of affirmation. Just a show of hands, who likes to feel appreciated by just kind words of, high fives. Okay, I see Jeff, I see Mackenzie. We've got some okay, so how about good job, you're fabulous, you're awesome, right? Those words make us feel good if that is our language of appreciation. The next one is quality time. So that could look like having a staff outing or taking your staffer to lunch, coffee. Who doesn't like a meal, or a time to just, enjoy one another and get to know them, not just on a work side, but maybe on a personal side. Maybe they enjoy spending quality time. I know I enjoy quality time. I don't know if there's any others that have that as their appreciation language. Any quality time appreciators out there? Okay, all right, I see you, Haley, that's great. And the next one is receiving gifts. So maybe it's a gift card to your favorite coffee shop, like Bipartisan or the Mercado, someplace that you really enjoy going that's locally in your district. And maybe a gift card there is a great way to show appreciation. So gift receiving, do we have any gift receivers that love to be appreciated with a gift card or a treat? It's okay if you have more than one appreciation language. That's all right. I have a couple too, so I'll raise my hand for that one as well. And then acts of service. So this could be just giving your staffer time back in their day. Maybe supporting them in writing that newsletter for the month, or staying after to help tear down after an annual event that was or a signature event that was put together. So sometimes just acts of service is just a way to help that staffer feel a little extra appreciated by helping them out. All right. So now we are just going to wrap up here on everything that we have discussed today. So as we wrap up today's webinar, a few things to keep in mind if you have a staff or a managed one is to create a system using weekly, monthly, and quarterly planning tools. We shared some of those tools with you today, and again, we'll send those to you in an email template. Schedule supervisory weekly check-ins with your staffer, just to kind of get a temperature check on the projects they're working on and where they might need some added support. Next, give your staffer opportunities to lead, and most importantly, maintain an engaged and active board that supports your staffer. So opportunities to lead, giving that staffer just that confidence and that support that they can, go out in the district and engage with the businesses, create events, and have that backup support of their board with them. All right. And as we wrap it up, I'd love to leave it open for any questions that any of you may have. We've kind of gone over kind of a snapshot of the different management styles and templates that we use to help evaluate and engage our district staffers. And so I'd like to know if anyone has any questions before we close for the day. I will stop sharing my screen.
And it looks like Liz.
All right, Liz.
Okay, sorry, I'm still in the car. I'm still struggling with the
That's okay.
technology, but I have a question and it'll apply to most people, but not all here. But so say you get your staffer through Venture Portland, right? So their supervisor is the district president, but it's also Venture Portland. So two different supervisors. Are we saying that they get two different evaluations, two different goal settings? And we might have already talked about this and we don't have an issue with it. It just occurred to me as you were going through the slides, like how do we align that they're not getting two different directions, two different evaluations, or maybe they are different? If you could speak to that, that would be great.
Oh, I love that question. Thanks for bringing that up, Liz. So this specific webinar that we put together today was really to open it up for CII districts that are fortunate enough to have a district manager that's powered through Venture Portland. But there's also boards here that have a staffer that is outside of the CII program. And so what we shared today are tools that I use to help manage my district staffers that non-CII districts can use in their district as they are managing their staffers. So these are tools that we use here at Venture Portland, but can also be templates that other non-CII districts can create to help manage their staffers. To answer your question about CII districts that have a board president and me as their supervisor, the CII director, and what that looks like. As you know, we do have monthly supervisory check-ins with the district staffer, the board president or vice president, whichever one is available, and myself. And so that's a great time to really check in on the projects they're working on and go over the summary of what they've done for the month and what the district is specifically focused on for that month. Does that answer your question? Sorry, before I go to the next thing. Okay, great. I just wanted to mention too that, with a balanced board, having a 12-month calendar of what those activities look like really, really helps the staffer be guided in, what to focus on and how to, reach those goals sooner. So planning is always a great thing to have. Any other questions?
It looks like Ross dropped a question in the chat. He says, as a staffer, if I feel like I'm not getting the support and attention and time I need from my supervisor and board, what do you recommend is the best way to express my needs and concerns?
Great. So we talked about a little bit about this kind of in the slides where, when you have a staffer, having ongoing communication with your supervisor. So if they're available via phone, text message, or face-to-face, those are great ways to just be able to have kind of immediate point of contact. Another thing is to just schedule something and have something on the calendar every week, even if it's just a 30-minute checkpoint to really communicate with your supervisor what you're working on and where you might need additional support. I think putting something on the calendar is always a great way to have a committed time and place to meet with your supervisor. I hope that helps. All right. Lisa says, I love the annual review. Thank you. All right. Let's see if I can read any more of these chats here. Are there any other questions?
I had a question about just how does everybody know who's responsible for what? So there's a lot of kind of moving parts going on. Some people know that, as a secretary, I have to take the minutes, or as the treasurer, I have to, get the financials squared away. But as far as if there's a specific event or promotion, or maybe even just like help with a membership campaign, where can board members and staffers kind of go to look to see who's responsible for what and just make sure?
That's great. Yeah. To answer your question, when it comes to, again, like the roles of the staffer and the roles of the board, if there's a secretary, a treasurer, a president, vice president. Each role should be really clearly defined for the board so that they know what their responsibilities are. And also that the staffer knows what the board's responsibilities are as well, so that not necessarily to say that the staffer is holding the board to to those expectations, but to make sure there's a balance in what the board is responsible for and what the staffer is responsible for. And the board meetings is a great time to do those. So, you know, when there's a board agenda, it's great to give the staffer a space in that agenda to talk about what they're working on, but also give space for each board member to talk about what they're working on so that they're able to, you know, take responsibility for what their roles are and also, you know, talk about, you know, the effectiveness of what they're working on as well. Any other questions or comments? We still have a few more minutes.
Yeah, feel free to chime in. You know, we got a small group here, so we want to make it, you know, conversational and informal.
I was gonna chime in on you were talking about the worksheets and, you know, who's responsible for what, so knowing the overarching is, like you said, very important in making sure that people know what their roles are. And as well as the worksheets you presented, I couldn't see on the size I'm at, but a column that says Susie's doing this and Fred's doing that. And so that at the end, if Santa's handing out candy canes, somebody actually bought the candy canes. So.
Yeah, no, that's such a great point. Yeah, and that's what those checking points are really good at, communicating, because some of those small things can kind of slip through the cracks. You know, it's like, oh, we're having an event here and so-and-so's the guest speaker, but what about the audio? Who's going to set up the sound system? Like those things can very easily slip through the cracks. So ongoing communication and with the district supervisor, but also with your board president, letting them know what you're working on is so crucial to just make sure that everybody has been assigned a role and is doing the role they're assigned.
And the other thing that's really important to think about is that we work with a lot of volunteers and they don't always have the opportunity to dedicate their entire life for 40 years to the project. So at some point they're going to dial into another priority, whether it's a life change or just maybe they move to another town, and being able to have that documentation going forward. If I didn't know that I need to touch base with Weyerhaeuser about the Christmas tree in July, we wouldn't have a Christmas tree in November, December. And if that isn't noted somewhere, how would a new person in a position know what to do? And a new board wouldn't know either, because they wouldn't be hands-on, but that worksheet is your safety net or Maestro or whatever source you use.
Yeah, Lisa, I'm glad you brought that up. Usually, a show of hands, who uses has a shared drive or like a Google Drive where they keep all of their archives for their board or their business association. I think that that's really important to have. And then making sure, again, like you're saying, tracking those things so that if somebody resigns from their presidency and there's a new board member, or you have a staffer that comes in, all that information is on the living file where they can go in and track, you know, things that have happened in the past, who particular vendors are, and all the communication is organized in one space. So
none of that existed when I got here 6 years ago. The
wow.
management style was from what had been established 20 years before that. We didn't have online anything. Everything was hard copies and mostly in the folders of a volunteer who, if they ever left, we would have lost the 20 years of history of how certain projects were done. So it was very easy to get my board to agree very quickly to have some kind of a tool. Plus, ahead of me, the executive directors had been here about 1.5 years apiece before they got stolen away. So people never quite got into the groove of doing things before they were leaving. So it's really important to have that documentation. I really appreciate the tools that you provided today.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I appreciate your attending and this webinar today. And thank you all so much for your feedback and for your engagement today. If there aren't any other questions, I
think Jeff had something he wanted to share.
Oh,
yeah, I was just going to add regarding, you know, establishing roles and keeping board members engaged. I feel like the board agenda can be a really useful tool. You know, having a treasurer's report on there, having, If your board has subcommittees, you know, it's an events committee report back. So those people that are signed up can sort of have ownership of those things, and sort of it's expected for them to update the rest of the group on what they're working on. I feel like it keeps people honest, and it keeps the communication alive as well.
That's a very great point. Thank you, Jeff. And
And-
Liz, I know your hand is up. I don't know if it was up from the last time or if you had something else you wanted to add.
From last time.
Okay,
Sorry,
okay.
I'll take it down. Thank you.
No worries. Just want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to share. Okay. Well, thank you so much again for taking the time to join us today for this webinar. Really hope that this information was helpful to you. At the end of this meeting, I will gather the slides and the templates and send it to you via email. Hopefully it's useful for you all. And if you have any questions that might come up later, please feel free to email me or Jacob.
Thank you, Nana, for taking the time. That was really informative. And yeah, we'll be sending out a follow-up email shortly. So thank you all for being here and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.